I don't know who's listening out there. Hopefully not the IRS or my family.
Iconic because of what's on it. Like, I don't need to describe that if you're watching the video here.
I mean, those have been selling recently for $15,000.
York tall letters are so cool. Could be worth $20,000 for a pair.
Could be.
Let's all agree the 2-inch Olympic plates are much cooler than the standard 1-inch plates.
All the sharks are out there looking nationwide in every ad, every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's really hard now. It's about making friends.
The real collection is the friends that we made along the way. That's a pro tip for any collector out there.
Massenomics.
What's up, everyone? We are back in Big Efren's home gym. We did a home gym tour last week. Make sure to check that video out. You can find it on our YouTube channel here as well. This week, we're going to dive a little more specifically into one thing in particular. Efren is going to teach us about his vintage plate collection. You're kind of the expert, right? We found the right man.
A little bit.
We found the right man for the job like we usually do.
If not, I'll fake it.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect. That's our strategy. Hey, don't give away all the secrets. So he has his vintage weight collection. He's got this really cool display. You were talking about it. What's the specs? It's like this. The display itself, it's like this 7-gauge.
Yeah, it's a 7-gauge post. I made it a few years ago when there was really nothing like it out there. And I actually call it the Iron Beast.
Okay.
And yeah, it's worked out really well. Over the years, I've expanded it. You know, recently I made the 3rd level. Just keep going up. Who knows? Maybe next time you guys come, it'll be 4th.
Oh, 4th level.
There you go.
Yeah.
But it works really well for me. It's compact and it can hold a lot of weight.
I'm particularly excited about having this conversation with Efren because I've kind of copycatted him in a way where I've started to build this display and started a very I have working on like a novice level of vintage weights that I'm working on. Efren has the S tier, the master class, the upper echelon. I'm down in like the D or C tier, but someday everyone's got to have goals. So I am super excited about it. It's this double-sided display. We're going to start on this side, and I don't know if we'll talk about every single plate or which way we'll go, but I do want to actually hit on most of them. So generally speaking, how do you organize this? Like, which plates are going top row, bottom row, middle row, this side, that side? Is there a rhyme and reason to all of that?
Believe it or not, I sit on the couch, on the chairs, and just kind of feel it out. Like, what looks kind of cool?
Yeah.
That's really the number one thing. But the actual organization, I would probably say side A, side B.
Okay.
So I would consider side A like the upper, the coolest ones, the ones that I just want to stare at all the time because I sit there. And then the other one's side B. Okay.
All right. So some of these we'll talk about more than others, but let's start here. The strong plate. I know absolutely nothing about this. This is what is 102.5? Is this a 102.5 pound plate?
It really is 102.5.
Okay.
And the reason for that, it's from Chester Teagarden's company in California. And he was an editor of Iron Man and, very well known in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. And he made these because if you have two 102.5 and the bar, it's 250.
Okay.
So it's a magical 250.
Yeah, all right. That's an interesting approach to it.
And of course, the cross hub is really neat.
Yeah.
I really think actually this could eventually be like a world record attempt on hub lifting.
Hub lifting. I was just going to say hub lifting is, you've got a lot of plates here that a lot of people would be interested in attempting a hub lift. Brian didn't try to hub lift this one when he was here?
He kind of tried, but it's too hard.
Yeah.
But I think maybe someday that could be like the world record.
Yeah, that's cool. Below it, some of these, maybe if I do know a little something, I'll try and tell you what I think I know about it, and you tell me what I'm wrong about. So this is a Paramount deep dish plate. These are the plates that in Gold's Gym, Venice Beach, like that Arnold was using, that I've seen before. He was using Paramount plates when some of that pumping iron footage. I'm pretty sure they were lifting on like Paramount plates. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. They're classic West Coast 3-spoke plate. They're very deep. They're very iconic. But the difference being with these are round edge. And these are essentially the first generation of the Paramount.
Paramount.
Yep. And they're rounded edges. And I'll show you I have some of the other ones that are just, normal flat.
Right.
There's much fewer of these round edge ones.
Okay.
They feel, if you were to close your eyes and hold them, they feel more like Yorks.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. These remind me of Yorks here, actually.
Yeah.
Okay. Below them, you have Gibson. What is this? A cross?
Yep. It's a cross hub. Gibson is, a war hero from Arizona. and he was a weightlifter as well, champion bodybuilder, and he made those plates in Arizona. There's really not that many of them, and just out here in the West Coast, they're pretty legendary because they're just the design is just very classic and simple.
Some of your plates have probably original paint. Some of them have probably been repainted.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a preference? Do you repaint some of them yourself, or do you some of them it's just how you buy it and you keep it that way?
It depends a little bit on how I get them. For example, obviously I prefer original paint, as everybody generally does.
Right.
Sometimes it's just not possible, right? Because of rust, because of whatever. If in that case, I generally like to repaint them, depending.
Right.
But for the most part, like for example, this is not original paint,
right,
but it's really old.
Yeah, right,
and
right.
It's just
vintage
it's like really
paint.
cool.
Yeah, right, right.
So I love that. That's probably my favorite type, the old paint. So yeah.
Bergs, what country are Bergs made in?
They're from Germany.
Okay, and this doesn't have this is just, what do we call hubs that are just like this?
So these specifically, they're known as the volcano hubs.
Okay.
Just because of how it looks. The ones that came before it are the tall hubs because they're just a little bit taller and they just kind of go out. But these are actually they were used at the 1932 Olympics.
This style plate was
that style plate.
Yeah.
And these are very, very similar feeling to the York DDs because York actually used Bergs as their inspiration or copy or whatever you want to call it.
Below it is one of the most iconic. You got your Zuvers. These are 50-pound Zuvers. Iconic because of what's on it. Like, I don't need to describe that if you're watching the video here, but are these some of the rarest plates? I mean, you've got a lot of rare plates here. That's the question. What if we're going to look at is the rarest pair of plates that you've got on the
rarest plate, I would probably say, are the York tall letters and these Jackson first generation.
Okay.
The Zubers are just really special. One, they came out of probably one of the first powerlifting gyms that were just doing crazy heavy, crazy things. And unlike pretty much all of the other ones, those were never really sold to the public.
Okay.
So every one of those weights came from the actual gym.
It was in the gym.
It was in the gym. And the gym hosted the very first World's Strongest Man competition. And so a lot of the lore came from that. And obviously the design really adds, significant part to why people like it.
Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you do or don't like talking value on everything, but everyone's always curious of value. We're talking about some very rare plates here. To give everyone an idea, what could the range of a plate like this be if someone had the opportunity to buy one?
Well, as long as I don't know who's listening out there. Hopefully not the IRS or my family, but I mean those have been selling recently for $15,000.
Yeah, for a pair.
For a pair.
Yeah, one pair
50s.
of plates.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's a lot of lift shorts. That's a lot of drink spotters. Below it, you talked about these a little bit earlier. These are British made, did you say?
Yep, they're the British Amateur Weightlifting Association. Those came from a gentleman in the UK, and those were at the 1948 Olympics.
Okay. The next one up on this top row, Tommy's talked about them. You talked about it as one of your rarest. To me, these may be the cool, like, there's a lot of cool plates. Like, just personally, these York tall... What do you
letters.
call them? York tall letters are so cool.
Yeah, they're essentially their first generation Olympic plates, and it goes back to the 1930s, and there's just not that many of them. They're usually lost to history.
Right.
But again, if you were to sell those are probably in the range, maybe even a little bit more nowadays.
Could be worth $20,000 for a pair.
Could be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
The Jacksons below it, what generation are these Jacksons?
So I actually have all three generations here, and we can talk about it now. I can show you. But
yeah, let's do all the Jacksons together. Let's talk about them.
So that's the third generation. And
how do you know?
I'll show you. The really cool thing about them is that you can see that the mold evolved over time. So the very first generation is this one that I have here, and you can see that it's very simple. It doesn't have extra text here. It doesn't have the cross hub, and it doesn't have the lead pocket. So this is the very first generation. Very simple from the 1930s. Again, these would go for $15,000 plus.
Yeah.
And with these, very, very few of these are out there, and that's the very first generation. The second one is when he added the cross hub and this text down here. So
Yep.
you can see that it's, goes from that to that, adding the cross hub and the text down here. And in the third generation, it's the same thing, but he added the lead pockets.
And was that for a precision weight reason?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So basically, he would, weigh them, and he could add lead there if needed. And of course, all of the Jackson 1A sets that he would make, he would machine them down to the ounce.
I notice in a lot of your Jacksons, you've got other Jackson around, almost none of them have any lead in the lead pockets. But you do have a pair over there that does. Was he adding the lead to the lead pocket, or was it like the end user, or what was going on with that?
No, he would add it.
Okay. But none of them have them in it almost hardly.
What I've actually, once you actually have so many of them that you can kind of tell
Right.
the pattern, it seems like the 25s were a little bit lighter, and he would add.
Okay.
It's mostly the 25s that have it.
Yeah.
And some of the bigger ones were heavier, and he would machine them down.
Okay. So you probably wouldn't find one that's machined down that also has lead in the pockets, because
No.
it'd be contradictory, two different
Generally,
ways.
no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Alico on the bottom.
Yeah,
from
those
Sweden.
Those are exactly.
I can
those
tell
are
because it says Sweden.
the second generation. The third generation I have over there, they have extra little lines, but yeah, those are just iconic. Alico, they actually borrow my pictures for that plate all the time, because they just don't even have them over there very very much.
Right. These York deep dish plates here, what are these? They have the center hub is really big and wide.
So these are called the thick hubs.
Okay.
And these are actually probably some of my favorite ones of all. They are essentially the very first version of the York deep dish of this style, right? You can see that they have the York Olympic Standard barbell text.
Okay.
They have the fins. They have the feeling of the actual weight itself. But they were only produced for not that long, because they would often crack because this hub is so thick.
Okay.
Remember, back then they were using them for Olympic weightlifting. So when they would
Right.
drop them, they were very prone to cracking. And you actually start seeing them in magazines in the late 1930s. And in the early 1940s is about when they stopped and they transitioned to what we now know as a normal York deep dish.
Right. And you got a pair of strong 45s that would
Yep,
be...
it goes back to Chester.
Yeah,
Yep.
back to the 102.5s that you have up there.
The one thing that we don't know, and I believe the right timeline is it goes that Strong came out with the first cross-up, but we don't exactly know if Strong was the first one or Jackson was the first one.
Okay.
But they're both probably around the same time.
Okay. These are York deep dish chromed plates. What the heck's the story on those?
So as far as we
Those are
know,
interesting to me.
as far as we know, they're the only ones that York ever produced that way, and they were actually Norv Szymanski's weights when he broke the World Olympic lifting record.
Okay.
They gave those to him as a gift.
Like these, do you think there was is there one pair? Was there one set?
It was a set.
Okay.
And my buddy actually has the other pair in Michigan. They came from Michigan. Norv was in that area. And when we got them, we were able to get both pairs, and we split them. And the change plates, I actually have a few of them, but most of them were just lost to history. And the reason for that is he had a gym where people would just take them, and he would just use them. And when we got them, they were actually painted completely black, because he was trying to hide that these were the chrome special ones.
Okay.
And so even some of my other ones, my small ones, are black. It took a long time to get rid of the black paint, but that's why the rest of them were just gone.
Okay. The Weider cross hub 45 deep dish plates that you've got on the bottom here, that would be Joe Weider. Why does the cross hub on the Weider plate look so much like the cross hub on the Jackson plate above it?
So it's a little bit of a dramatic story.
Yeah.
Essentially, Weider and Jackson talked about and collaborated.
Yeah.
Now,
there's a little bit of drama.
A little bit of drama. Supposedly, they were going to work together, and Andy was going to help him, produce these weights. Supposedly, and again, allegedly, Weider reneged on the deal and said, okay, never mind, I'm going to do my own thing, because he didn't want to go into partnership.
Yeah.
And then a little bit later, out comes these weights that are basically exactly, like the Jackson cross-up. They are
maybe it was just
straight
a
edge.
coincidence.
Maybe, yeah.
Could have been a coincidence that he did exactly
just kind of like your shirts, how people just borrow them here and there.
Yeah. We get it.
Coincidence.
Yeah.
So same thing, and then of course the edges are straight,
right?
And they're machined pretty well.
Yeah.
But then the other crazy thing about them is, for a long time, people thought that they were only made in the early 1950s for a little bit of time. But over time, we know, and now we know more about it, that they were actually been produced in Canada as well later, and so more of them have come out. But they used to be really, really rare until our Canadian friends started shipping
wait a
them over
second,
here.
we got some of those.
We
too.
have like a dozen here.
Yeah, we got some of those rare weeder plates. What are the Viking on the bottom? What country are those made in?
In London.
Okay.
So that specific style was again used at the 1948 Olympics. Those were the ones, because Viking was the sponsor of the Olympics. Those are the ones that were actually in the show.
Okay, that's cool. I know nothing about the Mars plates that you have on the top left corner. They look really cool. I like the
up until
lettering
recently,
on those.
very few people knew about them, and they from Northern California, and it's basically a collaboration between Paul Martin and Rudy Smith. And Paul Martin was a maker in California who specialized in very high-end machining and plates. And Rudy Smith actually worked with Jack LaLanne, and he produced the first Smith machine.
Oh, yeah.
So for the longest time, people couldn't figure out, why is it Mars, why is it like this? But it's actually basically Paul Martin and Rudy Smith. And it wasn't until recently that we were able to verify that. And we actually didn't even have a picture of the plates really anywhere. And I stumbled on the original picture when I went to Leo Stern. He had the original picture that showed Bill Pearl in California with a full set of them. And in the magazine, I went back and said, wait a minute, I've seen that picture before. In the magazine, it was cropped, so you could never actually see the weights. But Leo Stern had the original photo.
Cool. The last one on this side that we haven't talked about yet. Zuvers again. This is 150 pounds, right?
Yeah.
You got to see how thick this thing is.
I put it up there and it's never coming off.
What's the? Was there many pairs of the 150s?
Yeah. So from what we hear from the family, they of the 100s, 150s, and 200s, they made about 10 pairs of each. And so there's not that many of them. Luckily, they're not hard to lose, but there's still not that many of them.
Yeah, this one's not falling off the truck on accident. Okay, cool. Should we switch over to what was this, side A or side B?
Side A.
Okay, side A. Now we're gonna look at side B. What side means more to you? If one of the side had to disappear tomorrow, would you want it to be side B?
It would be side B.
Okay, yeah. All right. You don't want that to happen, but
No.
just for reference. So, let's start. You got another set of Bergs right here.
So
what's the difference about these Bergs?
So these are more just a modern version of them. Powerlifting, you can see tighter, narrow, from the 70s.
Right. Tell me if I'm wrong. BFCO, yours are yellow here, but I got a pair of BFCO plates the other day. Are they the same as yours, or are yours
Same
different?
ones.
A different
Same
generation?
ones.
Hey, look at that, everyone. I got a pair that Efren has displayed. I have a pair of those even. So I'm yes, up from D. I'm making progress. I thought those looked familiar, but BFCO, I don't know that wasn't Arnold also lifting some BFCO plates at the time. We talked about Paramount, but wasn't BFCO in the mix too?
Yeah. They're a local foundry in LA.
Is it Bell Foundry?
Bell Foundry,
Yeah.
and they made a bunch of different things, including ultimately their own.
Okay, they're cool plates.
Yeah.
I just unboxed those like the day they came the day before we came to our trip.
They feel
to see
great,
you.
right?
Yeah,
they're just very deep, and I like the design.
Yeah, they're cool plates.
They're pretty cool.
All of the plates on your rack are collectible. All of them are not inexpensive, but to give people like more of an idea, like there's levels to this. Like you don't have to be prepared to spend $15,000 on a pair of plates. Like you might be able to get a pair of these plates for some even others. I've got maybe $200, $300, $400, $500 for a pair. So there are like less pie in the sky collectible plates that you can get in on.
My buddies make fun of me because they tell me like, "Oh, why do you still have the BFCOs?"
Right,
I love them.
Because do the BFCOs belong with the York tall script letters?
Probably.
Like that would be the that's what their point would be. Yeah.
But I tell them like, one, I like them. Two, they're West Coast, and so I have to represent all the West Coast.
Yeah. This Jackson on the bottom. You don't. None of them on the other side, I don't think were. They were 1-inch standard plates. On side A, no 1-inch standard plates.
No.
You are 2-inch Olympic plates more interesting to you?
Generally, yes.
That's just a fact. Those are much cooler. I mean, let's all agree the 2-inch Olympic plates are much cooler than the standard 1-inch plates.
I have some of the 1-inch, but
yeah,
got rid of them.
Yeah, but so those would be standard Jacksons or one.
Those are actually called a number 5, which is a little bit bigger. But yeah, they're not Olympic.
Okay.
But the reason I have those is because if you can see the weight, those are really special. They're 100 pounds.
Okay.
And there's just not that many of them.
100-pound Jacksons.
Yeah, I actually got them from a fellow in New Mexico. I went out there and drove them back, and it was an amazing experience meeting him. And anyway, shout out to him when he sees this. But yeah.
Yeah. Here's a pair. I think this is another pair I think cool. You know why, Tommy? Not only do I have one pair of Marcy's, I now have 2 pairs of Marcy's, but there may be generations that I don't know about. So I don't know if is there different Marcy's or not? Okay, so mine would be like yours in theory.
There are, but the only one that's truly collectible is this one.
Right. Yeah, yes. Not. That's actually something interesting with collecting plates in general. I think sometimes people will get mistaken. One that reminds me of the Weeder plate. You have the Weeder cross hub, a collectible plate. You said some more surface and stuff, but still a collectible plate that people want to get. But then there'll be like Weeder plates that were, I would call mass produced, that are very widely accessible, that maybe a fine plate to lift on, nothing wrong with that, but it's not quote unquote collectible because they're so widely available. And sometimes people get confused on that and it can be tricky. That's why you need the Iron Guide, right?
There you go.
The Iron Guide. Give us the plug on the Iron Guide again. Where do you get it? And
it's on theironguide.com. And if you ever want to know how you can turn $20 wild fine into $15,000, that's how you would know.
Yeah, that's how you would know. Okay, cool. The Jacksons underneath of it. So these are 50-pound Jacksons. Why did he make? Why would they be 50-pound Jacksons?
So originally he had 2 lines of his plates. One of them was the Olympic 1A,
right?
And then the other ones he had the number 4 and standards. And these are technically not originally Olympic, but those came from Stern's Gym in San Diego.
Okay.
And so they were using them, and before they closed down, unfortunately, I was able to talk to the owner, and he said, like, hey, yeah, I'll let you, buy them so that you can have them for your collection.
Then we talked about your rounded Paramounts, like the first generation Paramounts on the other side. These are the flatter edge Paramounts.
Exactly.
On this side, so a little bit newer. Maybe the other ones are slightly more rare than these ones are. But we talked about Arnold lifting them. Any idea in like Gold's Gym, was he lifting ones like this generation or ones like that generation?
So generally, so these are considered the 3rd generation.
Okay.
Because these are marked.
Marked.
So there's 3 of them. There's the rounded, unmarked, straight edge, unmarked, and then these straight edge marked.
Okay.
Generally, the ones at Gold's were mostly the 2nd generation.
Okay.
But we do see pictures of them of the other ones.
Okay.
I don't know that we've ever seen pictures of the marked ones there.
Okay. I know nothing about this plate. It's a standard 1-inch, 50-pound SIDS Olympic bell. So what is that?
Yeah, it's actually from a gym and a trainer that was in LA in the 1920s and 30s. So really old. That was just, my buddy of mine, shout out to Alex who helped me find it. It just came up locally. He was happened to be looking in the marketplace and he told me about it, and I ran out there and made the deal. That's the other part too that they don't tell you. All the sharks are out there looking nationwide, and every ad every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It's really hard now. It's about making friends, and I wouldn't be able to do any of this by myself.
Yeah. The real collection is the friends that we made along the way. That's a pro tip for any collector out there. We'll come back to that one because I want to finish on some York talk. The Iron Man 100-pound Olympic plate on the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, those are from Perry Rader, who published Iron Man magazine, and eventually he created his own weights.
And so he would have been selling them out of the magazine, I suppose,
Yep.
as a way to make the magazine make money. You start selling plates, and people pick up your magazine and they buy the plates.
Exactly. And the cool thing about it is that the 50s, which I have right here, and the 100s, those were very distinct, different style that he mostly advertised for people who wanted to load up leg presses and just do
Right.
heavier things.
That's what, like today in the gym, that's mostly what I use. Like we've got, say like the double-sided 100-pound York plates. We leave all those like on the leg press to
There you
use for
go.
that same exact thing.
So it was the same reason.
Yeah, great minds think alike. You got another set of Bergs. We talked about Bergs on the other side too.
Yep.
Is this just a different generation?
No,
too?
these are the Volcanoes, the 1930s, kind of like the ones on the side A.
Okay.
I generally don't like to have
Doubles?
duplicates, but these are just so special that I keep them around.
I don't know that much about this one. I've seen this. I know that they're pretty rare, but I don't really know that much. It's a cool looking plate. It specifically says Fresno, California, so that adds to it being cool. But what's the story on those?
So as you guys know, I don't know, the Universal machines that came out, they were really the first machines, all-in-one machines, the jungle gyms that were out there.
Yep.
And what you will find later on are a lot more of the imported weights. But those were the very first ones that they made. And if you notice, they share the Paramount mold.
Yeah, right.
So it's essentially the same mold. They just, rebranded it. But that's
So it's not a Weeder. Is it a Weeder Jackson similar situation? No, okay.
Kind of, but
yeah, not quite. Not the same drama.
But the real drama is that it's the only one that I only have a single of. And my buddy who has one doesn't want to give it up.
Does he only have a single?
He has a single.
I don't think it's
know
right
why,
that both of
right?
you should sit around with a single.
That's what I tell him.
Someone's got to break. It's like the ultimate game of chicken. Someone's got to move there.
There you go.
And
But
it's not going to be you.
it's not going to be me.
I don't know about these. These are just the no cross hub plates.
Yeah, these are Canadian.
Okay.
And they, if you notice, they're actually very, very similar to the Jackson molds.
Like the Jackson first generation.
Yep. And they feel very similar.
Yep.
So we believe that he basically used, the Jackson molds as an inspiration.
You don't like doubling up. Is this a double up of the Jackson third generation? So you have two double ups maybe kind of in the whole...
I have a few.
Yeah,
I make exceptions.
Yeah. So Jackson maybe has a soft spot in you that you're like, okay, I'll double that one up. Are these ones made in Tokyo? I'm not sure why, but I just...
Osaka from 1964. Okay. They were used at the Olympics there. The ones at the Olympics were chromed out. And we believe these were used back in the warming area.
Okay, they were the warm-up area plates.
Yep.
Okay, finishing with a couple of Yorks. I skipped over them when we went by the dead center in this rack. You've had other visitors at the gym here before. These would be York deep dish plates, and it looks like none other than Brian Shaw signed them here.
Exactly. They're the Brian Shaw edition.
Otherwise, these would be the typical... these would be the more common York deep dish plates. We talked about what do you call the thick hub ones? The
thick hub.
The thick hub ones?
Yep.
Oh, it's so intuitive. I even know it. This would be, like I've got a couple pairs that would be similar to this, except for one glaring difference is Brian Shaw didn't sign ours yet.
But yeah, I mean, those are just classic.
Right.
When you get them, they're just amazing. They're classic.
Tell me if I'm wrong about this, but like, we talked about that there's levels to it. You got BFCO and Marcy, which is maybe on a level. You've got first generation Jacksons and Zuvers and the York tall letters. That's a whole other level before. But this is almost kind of like, to me, like the York deep dish is like the start of, it's almost like the start of a higher end of plates almost. Like if you've got Marcy's and BFCOs that are in one tier, like this is where a whole other level of collecting maybe just begins, kind of.
Definitely, you're totally right.
Yeah.
And the really cool thing,
it's like $1,200 a pair, maybe $1,000 a pair, $1,300 a pair. Depends on
there.
finish and where you get them and that sort of thing.
And the cool thing is that they've become kind of the standard. It's
Yeah.
like the US dollar.
Right.
Everything is measured relative to the Yorks because they're very stable. Everybody wants them. Everybody can generally get them if you have the money or can trade for it.
Yeah.
And so, and the other really cool thing that I realized the other day, they're one of the few where people would be okay wanting multiples.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen with all the other ones. Sometimes you just want one and you're fine.
Right.
With the York deep dish, you're okay having 2, 3, 4, 5.
Anecdotally, that is very true in my case. I don't have that many pairs of vintage plates, but I already have 2 pairs of York deep dish plates because it is like, I want like 5 pairs. So in theory, if I wanted to squat 5 plates with them, I could do it with all York deep dish. It is, they're I'm not saying that the rarest or whatever, but there's just like there's an iconic feel of York plates. Very, a minor difference here. Same, very, very similar looking plates to those York deep dish, but these would be the marked with the 45.
Exactly.
Right.
And if you notice, those marked 45s are actually the same mold as the marked 20 kilograms.
Yeah, so yes, I was saving this one too. So were these made in the U.S. though also? And like, what make the 20 kilograms? What's up with that?
They were all made in the U.S., but those are believed to have been made specifically for the 1952 Olympics in Helsinki, in Europe. And of course they were, kilograms, but they're the same mold. And the other cool part about it is they're a little bit shallow compared to that. So if you try to hub it, these are a little bit easier than these two.
Just one other thing on hub lifting, something else to watch out. It depends on how things have been painted too, because this York that Brian signed is a little bit glossier. Whereas some of these like just you almost have to feel it, but there's just more grit to it. Yeah. So as a hub lifter, technically same set of plates could be different. All right, so we're just finishing up talking about the KG versus the 45. I did want to check, are those newer than the unmarked deep dish? Which one's newer? Is that known?
It is not exactly known, because one interesting part is that this mold itself is generally more modern. However, we know that at the end of the life of the York deep dish, they were selling these. Okay. And so it's almost like that mold is older and they were selling them. They then created a new mold for the 20 kilos and these. Yeah. Then they stopped and went back to that. These. Yeah. So it's a little murky.
These are typically a little more expensive than the unmarked. These, I don't know, could be maybe $300, $400, $500 more expensive than the other ones. Yeah. So I don't have a set of these yet. So I actually, unfortunately, as a collector, you start to realize, well, I have these, but I don't have the ones that say 45 right there yet. So it's a whole separate thing that you might need. One last one. It's not on your tree, but I want to talk about them because I like them. Because we didn't talk about that much in the full gym tour video. Is your Ivanko OMC, the chromed Ivanko plates that you have this very elaborate cart of OMCs all on it.
Not a cart, a chrome throne.
Ah, throne for OMCs. Yes. Is this in the middle? Is this a 100-pound OMC? Yeah. Okay, you've got that on the middle on each side. You can tell it's almost double the thickness. When were the OMC Ivankos produced?
They started in the 80s. And then they were produced for quite a while. Yeah. And they transitioned in terms of where they made them. And you can tell sometimes based on the quality of the plating and how they made them. But, they were probably my first love. That's kind of the...
This is one of the things that got you into the vintage a little bit, then you'd say.
Yeah.
This is...
It's the gateway.
Yeah, coincidentally, I've got a little hit list right now of adding to my display, my Efren style display that I'm working on. And the OMC Chromes are on my hit list. So if you're out there trying to get rid of a pair of OMC Chromes... drop a comment on the YouTube video. I want to talk. You can even DM me if you're going to sell me a pair of your OMC Chromes. So, awesome collection. I love it because as I'm talking about, the more that time goes on, the more that I'm getting into this. And, we have a gym of Massenomics gym equipment. And I feel like that's been pretty established. So now I'm at the point where I'm like, well, what else can I do? What else can we get to add to the gym? There's not many essentials left. So really cool historic deep dish plates become more and more interesting to me all the time. I love the collection. Thank you for showing it. Everyone, let us know. Value aside, just looking at the plates, what's the coolest looking plates on Efren's rack? Which one, if you were going to get just one to mount up in your gym just to look at and enjoy, which pair of this epic collection would be your favorite? Thank you for watching. Thanks, Efren, again. We appreciate it. This was awesome. Make sure to hit up Efren's home gym tour video that we already did. Like Massenomics, check out some of our merch that we got for sale. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.